My grandmother had one rule at her house that I was never allowed to break, and it sounded so ridiculous that my parents thought she was joking. My grandmother had one rule at her house that I was never allowed to break, and it sounded so ridiculous that my parents thought she was joking. If I ever heard her humming, "You Are My Sunshine," no matter what I was doing, no matter what time it was, I had to stand up, walk to the front door, cross the street to Walt's house, and knock until he answered. Not run, walk. I was not allowed to look at her, ask her anything, or say a single word on my way out. If I did it wrong, she would make me do the whole thing over. And trust me, my grandmother was a 5'0" retired 911 dispatcher named Birdie, who had no problem making a kid practice something 30 times. To me, it was the weirdest rule on the planet. My cousins thought it was comedy gold. They would hum the song under their breath at Sunday dinners, just to watch me freeze with a fork halfway to my mouth. By the time I was 12, I had done the walk more times than I could count. She ran drills in the middle of cartoons, in the middle of homework, once in the middle of my own birthday cake. Old Walt across the street was in on it. He would check his watch, write something on a notepad by his door, and hand me a butterscotch. I figured the whole thing was just a game two bored old people had invented to entertain themselves. One night in March, I was staying over for spring break. My parents were out of state for a wedding, and Grandma Birdie had made her famous pot roast. We played gin rummy at the kitchen table until my eyes got heavy, and she sent me to bed with a glass of milk and a kiss on the head. I remember her pulling the blanket up and whispering, "Night, night, Rory Bird." Sometime after midnight, I woke up thirsty and shuffled toward the kitchen. The phone rang once before she picked it up. I heard her say almost nothing, just and and then the soft click of the receiver. Then I heard the faucet turn on. Dishes started clinking in the sink. Dishes I knew were already clean because I had dried them myself. And then, over the sound of the running water, my grandmother started humming, "You Are My Sunshine." I almost laughed. A drill at midnight, seriously. But something stopped the laugh in my throat. She had never once run a drill after dark, and her voice was doing the song too slowly, too evenly, like a music box winding down. I did what the rule said. I turned around, walked down the hallway, and opened the front door. The porch light was off. Every house on the street was dark except Walt's. His door opened before my knuckles ever touched the wood. He was standing there fully dressed at almost 1 in the morning, phone already pressed to his ear, and he pulled me inside with one hand while he said 4 words I will never forget. "The kid is out." 2 minutes later, police cars came down the street from both ends. No sirens, just lights sliding across Walt's curtains in blue and red. Through the front window, I watched flashlight beams sweep across my grandmother's side yard, and I heard men shouting somewhere behind her house. It turned out a man had knocked on her door that afternoon, claiming to be from the water company. No badge, no uniform, a van with paper tags parked 2 houses down. She smiled, thanked him, and watched him look at her fence latch on the way out. Just after midnight, her back fence neighbor, Miss Ada, called and whispered that a man was crouched at Birdie's laundry room window, working at the frame with something metal. My grandmother never turned on a light. She never raised her voice. She knew she could not walk me out the front without passing the hallway window, so she turned on the faucet, rattled clean dishes, and hummed. Then she stood at that sink, humming and clinking plates for 6 more minutes, so the man outside would hear a normal house, while her only grandchild walked out the front door in socks. The police pulled him off her window with a pry bar, a box cutter, gloves, and a coil of rope in his bag. He had spent 3 weeks knocking on doors in that neighborhood, finding out which houses had a woman living alone. Hers was the 3rd house that month. It was the first one where somebody was ready. On the drive home from the station the next morning, I finally asked her why the song, why any of it. She was quiet for a long mile. Then she said, "I answered 911 calls for 31 years. The people who made it were never the loudest ones. They were the ones who had a signal ready before they ever needed one, and somebody on the other end who knew what it meant." She looked over at me and said, "I just needed you to know the song before the night came, sweetheart. I am 25 now. She passed away 3 years ago. I have not hummed that song since."